Hi guys, I'm Siluni Herath from Gampaha Medical Student Association. This video is for the ones who are doing their A-level examination under the bio stream. So hope you guys find this video valuable.
So in this video, we are going to learn about Environmental Biology, Unit 8, a section of this unit. So that would be biodiversity. What do you mean by biodiversity? Biodiversity actually is all about the life forms on Earth. It is a variability that is present among living organisms from every source and also their ecological interactions they have with their environment. It basically can be explained under three levels as genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Genetic diversity. Genetic diversity is the variation that exists both within and among the species. This is the basic level of biodiversity, and it also forms the basis of evolution. The next one, species diversity. That is the variation among species, and it can also include the number of species and their abundance. Ecosystem diversity. That is the variety of habitats, living communities, and the ecological processes in the living world. It is also the largest scale of biodiversity, and within each ecosystem, there can be a large number of genetic diversity and species diversity. On a global scale, when you consider biodiversity on a global scale, the ecosystem diversity variation can be seen in biomes. The important services rendered by biodiversity. Environmental service. That is the most important service provided, and that is in maintaining critical environmental functions like carbon dioxide fixation, maintaining of cycles, carbon, nitrogen, and water cycles, soil formation, climate regulation, and thus. There is also a recreational, aesthetic value provided. Natural landscapes are a delight to watch, and they provide opportunities for recreational activities and artistic activities. It also promotes tourism and generates revenue for the government. There is also an ethical value provided. Actually, this means the right of all living beings to live on this planet. Humans have no right to decide which species should live and should not, since we are just a small part of this great world. Talking about the scientific value, the knowledge about biodiversity has helped scientists in discovering many scientific and technological innovations, in finding solutions to the problems we face day to day. Studying animals like nematodes, rats, and primates, scientists have been able to understand the human body, its functions, and to develop medicines. Studying how animals react during a natural disaster has been helpful in disaster management. The social, the cultural, or the religious values. Biodiversity can be important to different societies and communities due to different unique reasons. Some wetland sites are sacred to Aborigines of Australia, and bulls are considered to be an important part of the Hindu culture. Biodiversity is facing many threats today. One of the most important threat to biodiversity is habitat loss or fragmentation. Humans destroy natural ecosystems to grow food, harvest materials, and to build settlements. These actions can alter or even eliminate the conditions that are needed for plants and animals to survive. When animal habitats are converted into other human uses, such as for agriculture and for built-up area, they can no longer be able to support the species that was originally present. This results in the displacement or the destruction of the biodiversity. Deforestation, filling of wetlands, and also the mass-scale destruction happening in the mangroves of Negombo and Putlam Lagoon due to the establishment of prawn culture has destructed the biodiversity of those mangroves. Fragmentation means when habitats are divided into fragments due to the establishment of man-made structures such as roads and highways. The animal and plant species are forced into smaller areas and they are crowded so that it is harder for the biodiversity to sustain. Talking about overexploitation, another threat to biodiversity. It means the harvesting or the exploiting of biodiversity products in a manner and a rate that it cannot recover within the periods of exploitation. And this leads to a danger of biodiversity being completely lost. Especially for export, overcollection of indigenous medical plants from the forests of Sri Lanka and sea cucumber for medical purposes are a great threat. Kalutara ebony is threatened due to overexploitation during the colonial period. This plant, ebony, has a very slow growth rate and takes many years to grow. Also, the intense commercial fishing has led to overfishing and has threatened a rapid decline of food fish like tuna and cod in the world's oceans. Pollution simply means the addition of unwanted materials to air, water, and soil. Due to the extensive use of agrochemicals that wash away with rainwater into water bodies, the water becomes rich in nutrients, and that results in algal blooms, commonly known as eutrophication. Algal blooms create oxygen-depleted zones in the aquatic ecosystem and reduce the populations of fish and other aquatic organisms as well. Synthetic fertilizers are used, and this results in the pollution of streams and rivers into which these fertilizers are washed away to. Releasing of these toxic gases, sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide, causes acid rains, and this acid rain contributes to the death of many trees. Introduction of invasive or alien species whose introduction has spread outside their natural range and is a great threat to the native biodiversity. Alien invasive species compete against the native species, and this leads to their extinction. Once introduced for a considerable period of time, they may lack natural predators in the new environment. This becomes a great opportunity for them to reproduce successfully, and they gain the ability to spread without limits and thus take over the environment. Some examples are Gandapana and Guiana grass. Gandapana produces a toxin which prevents the germination and seeding growth of many other plants. greener grass in dry pathan areas facilitates fire because it has a very high biomass, and during the drought season, forest fires occur, causing the loss of biodiversity. Climate change, predicted to be the greatest long-term threat to biodiversity. Increase in temperatures, severe droughts, desertification, rising of sea levels. These are a few examples for the changes in climate that has occurred. Many species cannot adapt themselves fast enough to come up with these climate changes. These rapid changing of climate changes drive them to extinction, or they can be endangered. The global warming during the past century already has resulted in very marked ecological change. There are many changes in the growing seasons and also the breeding of animals. Biodiversity hotspots. They are areas with a high concentration of endemic species that are facing exceptional levels of threat. As a whole, Sri Lanka has a very high degree of endemism, especially the wet zone of Sri Lanka. So, Sri Lanka, together with the Western Ghats of India, is considered as one of the biodiversity hotspots in the South Asian region. Extinction of species. What do you mean by extinction? It is the elimination of the last member of a species from the earth. Existing species have to make room for new species. That happens either by themselves being changed or by them being extinct. Generally, the rate of evolution has been higher than that of extinction. But with the growth of human population and civilization, mankind has greatly increased the rate of extinction. The earth today has been dominated by humans, and no surface on earth is free from the human influence. So, in general, about 5 to 10% of the species are said to be facing extinction within the next 30 years. A big number compared to the previous years. The Red Data Book that has been published by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, provides a list of threatened species. And the definition of extinction in that booklet is: a taxon is extinct when there is no reasonable doubt that the last living individual has died. Dodo, woolly mammoth, and legume have already been extinct. Extinct in the wild. That is a taxon where the species are extinct in the wild and it is only known to survive in cultivation or in captivity, and that is well outside its natural habitat. An example is the giant tortoise of Seychelles. There are different categories of threatened organisms. A species is said to be threatened when it is about to leave the world. Threatened organisms can be described under 3 categories as critically endangered, endangered, and vulnerable. Critically endangered, that is a taxon where the best available evidence indicates that it is facing an extremely high risk of extinction in the wild. An example from Sri Lanka is the marbled rock frog. Species that are endangered belong to this taxon. A taxon is endangered when the best available evidence indicates that it is facing a very high risk of extinction in the wild. A common example is Atta, the elephant. Vulnerable is a taxon when the best available evidence indicates that it is facing a high risk of extinction in the wild. The dusky-striped jungle squirrel and buttercup are among the vulnerable species found in Sri Lanka. Endemic species. A species is said to be endemic when it is confined to a particular area or a country and cannot be found growing naturally anywhere else. Hora and Goraka are two plant species that are endemic to Sri Lanka. Black ruby barb and slender loris are two animal species endemic to Sri Lanka. The scientific names of these organisms are very important for MCQ questions. Indigenous species. A plant or an animal species that occurs in its historical known natural range. Has been there for a long time that it is a part of the natural biological diversity of the particular area. Snakehead and Kithul are two examples from Sri Lankan indigenous species. Exotic species are a species that has been introduced from another geographic region to an area that is completely outside of its natural range, and this happens by human activities and can be intentional or accidental. Tilapia and rubber are two examples for direct introductions. Migratory species. Migration is the act of moving from one place to another in a manner that can be seasonally determined, usually. Migration happens for the organisms that need to avoid unfavorable environmental conditions that limit their breeding. Suduredi hora and Avichia are two examples for migratory species that migrate to Sri Lanka. Relic species are the remnants, the remainings of a once widespread species, and they are now only found in very restricted or isolated areas. That is because those species, the areas that those species are found, have been lost in many parts of the world. Tuatara lives only on few small islands of New Zealand. Ichthyophis, a primitive ancient legless amphibian, has a worm-like body. And Lingula is found in the Bay of Trincomalee, and that is an example for a relict species in Sri Lanka. Talking about the flagship species, they are a species that has been chosen as a symbol to represent an ecosystem that is in extreme need of conservation. They have been chosen for the attractiveness, the vulnerability that they possess, and these help the ecosystem by bringing them support and acknowledgement from the public. So the concept of flagship species is that the publicity these few key species have been given help conserve the entire ecosystem and all the other species as well. Keystone species are as the name suggests, play a very important key role in the stability and the functioning of a system. If by any chance that this species is removed from the system tends to collapse and cease to exist. Consider the planktons in a pond. That is a very important part in a food chain of an aquatic food chain. So if that is removed, the system may collapse. Invasive species are a species that has been introduced and spread outside the natural geographic region and cause a very high threat to the native biodiversity. These species take advantage of the human disturbances that are present in the environment and establish and spread themselves. They have a very high capability to tolerate the wide range of environmental conditions and reproduce highly, and this helps them expand easily. Although a very small percentage of species become invasive, the damage that they render is very huge. So, these invasive species have been considered as a major cause for the depletion of biodiversity. Kalutara Golubella, the giant African land snake, was introduced to Sri Lanka as a contamination of soil brought with some other plants, and this contaminated soil contained eggs of the snake. Japan jabbera was introduced to the country in the early 110 years ago without knowing that it would be an invasive species. Conservation. The principal goal of conservation is to ensure the long-term survival of as many species as possible. Species that are in danger of extinction have to be specially protected, and steps are taken to ensure their continued reproduction and survival. Conservation can be done in two ways: in situ and ex-situ. In situ conservation, the species is protected and its reproduction is facilitated in its natural habitat. Basically, a large enough population, adequate, appropriate habitat space is ensured. Protected areas, traditional home gardens, sanctuaries, national parks, forest reserves, they are examples for in-situ conservation. Ex-situ conservation, here the species is taken out of its natural habitat and looked after in places where its survival and reproduction are ensured. Botanical gardens, zoos, field gene banks, captive breeding, genetic resource centers are some examples for places where ex-situ conservation occurs.
So hope you found this video interesting and also gained something new out of it. So all the very best for your exam.